Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited to start this new podcast with you. So, this podcast, we'll be looking at the vanishing twin. Okay, and so we're going to look and we're going to take a dive into the prenatal being. So, before we start, as always, please note that I'm a quantum life and quantum soul consultant. I'm not a medically trained doctor or medically trained professional in any way. If you have any symptoms or you're unsure of anything, please contact your doctor. Also note that these podcasts are not for diagnosis or for treatment in any way, shape, or form. This is just to inform you and to open up some conversation about things that you might not be aware about. Okay, so the vanishing twin. Often I see clients and then we find that they have some prenatal trapped emotions, and then when we look at them, we see they absorbed emotions. Or often the body takes us back to the womb. The body will say that there was some trauma in the womb, and usually when the body says there's trauma in the womb, we have a few options to look at. Obviously, trauma that mom experienced, the baby will also absorb, but often we find that the trauma in the womb was that there were two babies and only one ended up surviving. Now, I know you must think, Natanya, how on earth do you know this? And often when we test and we do the muscle testing and we see, and we then speak to the mother will say, I did have some spotting. I did have to go to the doctor in the beginning of this pregnancy. And I, the other day, found I had a client that's a teenager, and we found that she had this trauma in the womb of a vanishing twin. And then I sent some links to the mother along with a report so that the mother can read up on it. And when she read up on it, she came back to me and she said, "Oh my word, I actually think that I'm a vanishing twin. My other daughter has physical symptoms of a vanishing twin. And when we reach that area, I'll tell you more about it." And then she said, "I actually think that my sister-in-law is also a vanishing twin because she has the same symptoms as my other daughter." And so we see that this often runs in the family. And so with this family's case, it's an advantage because they had the physical symptoms on the outside that you can see. Okay, these are sure signs of a vanishing twin that has been physically absorbed. What we don't realize is there's much more than physical absorption, and you don't always have the physical symptoms to display what has been absorbed. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first of all, if we look at a vanishing twin, we first need to understand what are twins, where do twins come from, what different types of twins do we get. So the first thing that we know is a twin is when you get two types of twins. The one type is a monozygotic twin, and the other one is a dizygotic twin. Now, these are very big words, so for the rest of the podcast, we will use identical twins or fraternal twins. So an identical twin is when one egg cell and one sperm cell splits into two babies. Okay, so to form identical twins, one fertilized egg splits and develops two babies with exactly the same genetic information. So what happens, for example, if you have these type of splittings, 100%, because they have the same DNA, these babies will be the same sex. They will both be boys or both be girls. So when you often have twins that look vastly different, or when you have twins that's one's a boy, one's a girl, we know that's a fraternal twin. So fraternal twin is when two egg cells are fertilized by two different sperm cells, and they then grow together in the womb. These children will be unique. They will be no more alike than any other siblings that were born at different times. And these twins are more or less equally likely to be male and female. And contrary to popular belief, many people think that twins skip generations, and they actually don't. You have them every generation, and if they skip a generation, it's more likely that then there was a vanishing twin and you were just not aware of it. Okay, so what do identical twins look like in the womb? This is such a beautiful picture. You can see here they share an umbilical cord. they share a placenta, and they share an amniotic sac, which means they grow together in the same space. And that's why they have this special relationships. That's why they have this special connection with each other. So they share everything as well as DNA. Okay, so they have the same DNA mostly, and I say mostly, there are some mutations that take place in each baby. That's why you can tell them apart at some certain stages in life, and they will have different strengths and weaknesses. They share a placenta and they share an amniotic sac, and they have the same amniotic fluid. Identical twins, I just want to move my video, sorry. Identical twins, okay, so around 1 in 3 sets of twins are identical twins. This occurs because the fertilized eggs divides into 2 while it is still a tiny bit of cells. The self-contained halves then develop into 2 different babies, which will have exactly the same genetic information. Twins conceived from 1 egg and 1 sperm are called identical or monozygotic twins. The biological mechanism that prompts the single cell fertilization to split into 2 cells, we are still unaware. Where does this come from? How does the body do that? Is it like a jolt, or what happens? We are unsure why this happens and how this happens. Approximately 1/4 of identical twins are mirror images of each other, which means that the one half of the face, so the left side of the one baby, will mirror and the right side of the other baby will actually together mirror each other, and the right side of the one baby and the left side will mirror. So if you cut them in half and you put the 2 halves together, that will actually be how they would have looked like if they were one baby. Okay, but fraternal twins means that they have their own umbilical cord, they have their own placenta, they have their own amniotic sac, and they have their own amniotic fluid. Okay, so you can see the representation here from the previous picture to this picture. The babies grow and develop on their own, and that's why they'll have their own genetic material. Okay, so they do not have the same DNA. They will be like normal siblings with different DNA. They do not share amniotic sac, and they do not share a placenta. Fraternal twins, around 2 in 3 sets of twins are actually fraternal twins. So they are the majority of the types of twins that we have. And these are 2 separate egg cells that are fertilized by 2 different sperm cells, resulting in fraternal or dizygotic twins. These babies will be no more alike than the other siblings, like we said earlier, and they will look different. Even if they are the same sex by a coincidence, they will look different. You'll be able definitely to tell them apart. Okay, let's just move the video again. So what is a vanishing twin? A vanishing twin, also known as twin reabsorption, is a fetus. And those of you that don't use English, British English, you usually just use the E, but we speak of a fetus like that. A fetus is a multi-gestation pregnancy that dies in utero and then partially or completely reabsorbed. So let me put this in normal terms. Okay, so a vanishing twin means if there were 2 babies, whether it is identical or fraternal, okay, the 2 babies, the one does not develop well and is rejected by the uterus. The other one does develop well. So the baby dies in utero, in the womb, okay? And because there's another active pregnancy, what happens is the baby is then often absorbed by the surviving twins being in the womb. Vanishing twins occur in up to 1 of every 8 twin pregnancies, so multifetal pregnancies, and may not even be known in most cases. I was doing my nails the other day, and there was a lady sitting there, and she was speaking about she just found out she was pregnant, and she had some spotting and bleeding, and she went to the doctor. The doctor then did a scan, and he said everything is fine, and they saw 2 babies. He said it is, however, there are 2 babies, these will be twins. And when she went back for her second scan, it was imminent that the one baby had not survived. So she told me the conversation went like this. She started talking about this, and she had a spotting and a bleeding, went to the doctor, and she said they were twins. I said, oh my word, and you kept both? And then she said, actually, no, I did not. And I was so surprised because I knew in my line of work that if there's bleeding in the beginning of a pregnancy, 99% of the times, the twin will vanish. And then she actually confirmed and said, no, actually, I didn't keep both, but we have a healthy girl now. And so we see that this is actually something that happens often. And sometimes people are unaware of what it looks like. So studies suggest intense fetal competition for space, nutrition, or other factors during early gestation, with frequent loss or reabsorption of other twins, which means that the womb will always try and keep the healthy pregnancy, the pregnancy that's growing well. And if the other baby is not growing well, the uterus will reject the baby. And what will happen is the other baby will absorb those resources. In pregnancies achieved by in vitro fertilization, it frequently happens that more than one amniotic sac can be seen in the early pregnancy, like with this girl that I was speaking about. Whereas a few weeks later, there's only one to be seen, and the other ones have vanished. So with in vitro, they often put 5, 6 fertilized eggs into the uterus, and only one survives. And they do that for optimal survival. And so in these cases, you'll maybe have 4 vanishing twins. This is what it looks like. So the scans, the prenatal scans look like this. So this is the baby. You can see the amniotic sac is much bigger and the fluid fills much bigger. You can see this baby is larger, and you can see the little baby there, and you can see that this second baby is at the top of the sac, and you can see actually how it made a birthmark on the knee of the surviving baby. Okay, so this is also another scan that you can see. This baby is much, much bigger, and you can see growing healthily. And then you have this little vanishing twin here, and the amniotic sac is still quite visible. So you don't only get this in humans, right? You get this in plants and animals as well. And I did put some pictures of animals in as well. But what they call, if you can physically see the symptoms, like you can see with the plant here, is they call it a chimera twin or chimerism. And it's when an organism that was meant to be a twin, but in the womb, the 2 fertilized eggs fuses together. So they physically absorb together, becomes one fetus that carries 2 distinct genetic codes. So 2 different strands of DNAs in one being. And you can see that with this flower here. I tried to put in a picture of a human being, but I felt that the pictures weren't appropriate, but you can clearly see the skin of the humans in this specific type of hyperpigmentation. The girl, half of her body is red and the other half is skin toned. And so you can see the clear difference between the two. And so you can see that she clearly has 2 different strands of DNA. And that is the unborn child. The unborn child was absorbed, and their cells were absorbed. So instead of being miscarried, it was absorbed by the surviving twin. And you can see that the twins live with these, the people live with these two different sets of DNA, and they make different physical traits. Okay, so chimerism is a more extreme form of chimerism, can occur when a pair of twins is conceived and one embryo dies in the womb. The surviving fetus may absorb some of the cells of its deceased twin. This gives the surviving fetus 2 sets of cells, its own as well as its twin's cells. In other cases, human chimeras develop when 2 different sperm cells fertilize 2 different egg cells, and then these cells fuse together in one human being. Okay, so these were the pictures that I was speaking about the pigmentation on the skin. And this is often what it looks like on people, as you can clearly see big birthmarks as chimerism. In this cat, you can also see at the one side of the cat, you can see it was clearly supposed to be a black cat, and the other side was supposed to be a ginger cat. And these cells fuse together, and they call it hyperpigmentation. And so you'll have these patches and spots of 2 different color skin tones in half of the body. Another sure sign of chimerism, a vanishing and an absorbed twin physically, is when a child has 2 different eye colors. and they can also have two different genitals, and so that can be both female and male, and so then the sex of the child is actually undetermined. Chimerism can also cause autoimmune disease, um, and skin problems, nervous system problems, because because you have two sets of DNA, the one will maybe attack the one's immune system will attack the other immune system because it is a foreign substance. This especially happens in two different egg cells that were fertilized by two different sperm cells that then fuse together because the DNA is different. Chimeras versus vanishing twins. So chimeras is the physical absorption. We can physically see it. We can see the physical trait. It's either two different sets of colored eyes. You have the spotting or the big birthmarks, or you have the hermaphrodite in the genitals or on the DNA. But what happens in my case is vanishing twins doesn't necessarily always absorb they're not necessarily absorbed physically that you can see these traits, but we have the emotional absorption of that trauma. And so the baby that vanished oftentimes experience emotions, and the twin that survives then absorb those emotions. Another thing is that baby that survives, their subconscious mind is aware of the other twin that did not make it. And so that baby's subconscious mind is aware of an extreme trauma that no one else is aware of. And your whole life, your body will try to communicate this extreme trauma because you are the sole witness to this miscarriage often, and you are trying to communicate this this loss with your emotions. Okay, so let's see what it looks like. I know this is all sort of hanging in the air. You're thinking, oh my word, Natalia, where's this going? Okay, so symptoms that we often find, and this does not mean that if you have one or two of these that you are part of a vanishing twin, but this is usually what it looks like. Feeling like you are missing someone that is not there. You can stand in a room full of people and you can feel alone. You can sometimes be over emotional or sensitive, standing in a room full of people and feeling alone, feeling like something is missing and you don't know what it is. Okay, and so vanishing twins and the unknown symptoms. Confusion. You're confused about what you want, confused where you want to go in life, confused about what will bring you happiness. Anxiety often is a sure tell sign, especially if the anxiety was there, if your newborn jolted awake often. That is a sure tell sign that there was trauma in the womb. So if mommy didn't experience trauma, it's more likely that there might have been a vanishing twin, and that it is a trauma that's stuck in the body. And then grief, just feeling grief, but no one has died, nothing bad has happened, just feeling grief the whole time. The next thing is feeling that someone is missing, just feeling your whole life you're missing someone that you don't know. You are working for achieving something, but you're sometimes like, it's not really what I want, but I'm working for something and I'm working for someone, but I don't know for who it is. Feeling that you cannot connect with people on a deeper level. And the reason for that is your first intimate relationship you've lost. And because you've lost that first intimate relationship, you're scared of experiencing that loss again. And so you're struggling to connect with people on a deeper level. And also the trauma is in the way of you having that connection. You often struggle to find a spouse. We often find that people that are in their 40s, and please, some people, I know you just haven't found the one, but if you are looking and you are not finding, it's often because you have this connection with the twin, you're unaware of it, and so subconsciously there's no space for someone else in your life and in your heart. Okay, separation anxiety, forming unhealthy attachments, being scared of doing things alone, being scared of going somewhere, being scared the whole time of things. And the reason for that is, well, the last person left me. They abandoned me. I was abandoned and rejected, and my heart was broken. And it's from birth, from the womb. So there's a deep, deep, deep pain and womb. I'm scared of being left alone. Then over emotional, and so these are two slides that I cut in half, is you'll also look very happy on the outside, but you feel like you're mourning something on the inside and you don't even know what you're mourning. You'll just feel angry at the world. And you can switch between these two parts quickly. Indecisive, not knowing what you want, not knowing where you want to go, not knowing who you are, not knowing what your dreams are, and unsure of yourself, unsure of your gifts and your talents. And the reason for that is partly due to survivor's guilt. You feel guilty subconsciously for surviving. And so you're torn between following your dreams and living a life that will honor this other person that you're unaware of. Fear and anxiety, for obvious reasons. Like I said earlier, the first close relationship and intimate relationship that you had, your first buddy, left you. Okay, and there was no explanation for that. And so we see trauma, you feel traumatized without proof of any trauma in your own life. You look back at your life and you feel like, I feel so traumatized, extremely traumatized, but I don't know nothing. If you look back on my life, nothing big really happened that I can see as a trauma or that I can see as an issue. But yet I sit with PTSD. I sit with anxiety. I struggle to sleep. I struggle to trust. I struggle to move forward. So you sit with all of the symptoms of someone that experienced a huge trauma, but none of the proof. Sensitivity, very sensitive to what people say, what people do, how they treat you. Is this a sign that you will leave me again? Trust issues. Okay, so what do we do in sessions? So this is what I was working towards. So if we do get someone that has a vanishing twin, or that we know, okay, you have the two different eye colors, you are definitely a chimera twin, what do I do with you? So the first thing is I find the prenatal absorbed emotions from your vanishing twin, because no one dies without feeling anything. And so you absorb the sorrow and the sadness and the rejection and the betrayal and the worry and the anxiety, and you absorb those emotions and they sit in your body, and you act out of them when you are stressed, when you are worried, all of these. And then even if you try, you think to yourself, I'm trying so hard not to do this or not to act like this, but I just cannot help myself. And you act out of that trauma. So we need to get rid of it. We need to get rid of those connections to the trauma. We then also find your own prenatal absorbed emotions of the situation. So even though maybe mom is consciously unaware, the body does know what's happening, and so you might also absorb some of those emotions. And so we look at anything that's absorbed with regards to the vanishing twin. We find your own prenatal trapped emotions, and then we find the absorbed body parts. So often, you'll maybe get a cell or two from the heart, or a cell or two from the cells that were supposed to form livers, or whatever it is. And we find those absorbed body parts as well as their underlying causes. What have those absorbed parts caused in the body, and the trapped emotions connected to it? And then lastly, we look at the underlying causes of the trauma in the body. Okay, and we also look at the trauma bond. Are you somewhere bonded to the soul of this being in an unhealthy way? Are there bonds or ties that are rooted in your personality, in your relationships, in your understanding of self and others? And we find those in the emotions connected to it. And then if you are religious, we do dedicate the spirit of the baby to God, and we do a whole prayer. And if I'm working with the child is an adult and the parents want to be involved, then we do sit and we have an entire dedication. And I had a family the other day that had a little funeral And and so and then obviously we also would have to deal with mom's body if mom is willing to do that. And then what you need to understand is this is a very emotional process. Realizing, first of all, that you've lost a sibling. Okay, you've lost a twin, and the weight of that situation. Then realizing why you have trust issues, why you have anxiety, why you feel someone is missing. It is not in your head. The memory of this trauma is stuck in your body. And because it's stuck in your body, it's your body's trying to communicate it so that you can deal with it, so that you can live the life that you were supposed to live. And so this is only one podcast, you guys. This is only one podcast, and I thought I'd just speak about it because so many people are unaware about this. And I realize it with these clients of mine. And if you go look online, you will see there was this family in, I think it was England. They were trying to get child support. I think maybe a grant support rather from the government. And in order for them to do that, they had to do DNA tests. So the mother who carried these children, who birthed these children, she was in labor with these children, she takes the kids for their DNA tests. Mom and dad has to go for their DNA tests, so that you cannot get grant for kids that aren't yours, right? That makes sense, so that you can't take the whole neighborhood's kids and get grants for them. And so the tests come back, and they actually found that the mother is not the mother of these 3 children. And it ended up being a fraud case and a court case where they took away the kids from the mother. And then in the end, someone in the labs realized that the mom was a chimera twin, and she had no external traits. She went for her blood tests when she was pregnant with these kids. Nothing showed. But when they realized that actually what is happening is the mom's reproductive system's DNA is different from the rest of the body's DNA. And that's why the kids got different DNA than the mom has. They won the court case, and she got her children back, and they eventually gave them the grants. And so, but it's this woman had no external traits. And so we see many times people are chimera twins, have absorbed twins, and have vanishing twins, and are unaware of it. And so, but also that, so that, we can help these people. And it's such an interesting thing. It's such an interesting thing to think about, and to realize that so many people, if your mom said there was spotting or some bleeding in the beginning of your pregnancy, maybe you should have a look at someone just testing and seeing, are there some absorbed emotions and these types of things for you. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. As always, this was lovely to see you. Thank you so much. And until next time.